And it's really great to do this, and I'm excited to see everyone, not see everyone actually, but virtually see everyone in the Starting Bloc universe, wherever you are, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, New Orleans, India, London. I'm going to go through a little presentation I prepared about how to make money from writing, and there's a deck that goes with it. So I'm going to try to share my screen. So if I'm going back and forth between the keynote and the Hangout, it might look a little weird, but I think it'll help for you all to see the slides. And yeah, and any other questions people have, you can feel free to email me afterwards, and I'll definitely get back to you on stuff. And I'm really excited to do this because this is a talk I've never really done, and I'm kind of just taking a lot of information and trying to condense it into an hour's worth of material. So this is really just a test. It's a beta, which is perfect for Starting Bloc. And yeah, I just want to preface everything by saying, you know, when you talk about writing or talk about any creative work, it's just one person's opinion. And everyone has had a different experience, and everyone, when it comes to writing or making money or doing their art, is different, and everything's going to work differently for different people. So when I say something, it's just like my opinion, man. And it's not necessarily applicable for everyone, but I think these are tools and resources and ideas that can work for writers that are writing from a lot of different areas. So I'm going to share the deck with you. So I'm just going to do that so that you can follow along with the slides. Okay, so let's get started. How to make money from writing. So I'm going to go over the agenda. I'm going to go over a little bit of my story, why I started writing at the age of 27, which is only actually about a few years ago. Things I wish I knew when I started writing. A few tips for writers to turn their words into income. We're going to do a short Q&A with the Starting Bloc writers community. A few of you submitted questions before. There's only about 2 or 3 questions. And then we're just going to have a little wrap up to discuss some writing rituals and resources. So let's start by a little story of how and why I started writing at the age of 27. Obviously, this story starts like every Starting Bloc story should start at Starting Bloc. This is actually the chalkboard wall from New York 12. I went to LA 12. But I was in a really rough period of my life in 2012. I was stuck in a job for the US government that was a great job on paper, but a job that really didn't bring me that much fulfillment. And going to Starting Bloc kind of I realized, you know, I wasn't reaching my full potential, and that I wasn't in the right place, and that I really wanted to do something different. And, you know, it was a big kind of realization that, okay, I want to quit my job, I just don't know how. And I told a coworker back at the Peace Corps in DC that I was going to quit my job, and she was like, cool, so you're moving to San Francisco, where are you going to law school? And I was like, I'm not going to law school. And she's like, cool, where are you going to business school? I'm not going to business school. She's like, great, so you're just going just for life? And I was like, yeah, I'm going just for life, as if life wasn't good enough, right? And then I told my roommate back in DC that I was going to quit my job, move to San Francisco, and start writing. And he was like, everyone hates their job, Smiley. Suck it up. It's part of life. I was like, man, suck it up. That's kind of brutal. I didn't really want to spend the next 30 years of my life depressed. So the first lesson I learned on my writing journey was to ignore people that tell you not to pursue your dreams, right? Ignore people that are haters. Ignore people that say, oh, you can't do that. That's not possible. Because everything has already been done before. Every book has already been written, but it hasn't been written by you. You know, when I first had my idea for a book about 20-something stuck in a quarter-life crisis, another friend told me, oh, that book's already been written like 100 times by people who know a lot more than you. So again, ignore people that tell you not to pursue your dreams, because I'm really glad that I didn't listen to that person, because, you know, this whole journey would have never happened. So I went to Starting Bloc. I ended up leaving my job a few months later, and I started blogging about my work. I started blogging about kind of going through this quarter-life crisis. I started a blog. I only had a few followers. I think I had 4 followers, and 3 of them were my mom, which is awesome. Thanks, Mom. And it started to kind of take off. And I had some people being like, this is really awesome, Smiley. You should write a book. And I was like, yeah, dude, whatever. I'm not going to write a book. They're like, no, you actually should write a book, right? Because that's like believers are like, no, you actually should do that. And so I was like, yeah, maybe I should write a book. Like, I'm going to write this thing, like the quarter life, the quarter life breakthrough. This is a real thing. So I started telling some people about it. And I told this editor at a local publishing house called Chronicle Books in San Francisco. This is back in 2013. Hey, I have this blog. I've started to get a couple shares. Like, people are kind of into it. What do you think? And she was like, this is a good idea. Like, it's an interesting idea. You're just not that qualified to write it. So, right, this is back in 2013, and there was a decision I had to make there at that point. Like, okay, this editor who's a real editor at a real publishing house is telling me, like, I'm not ready. And I'm like, but I kind of want to do this. And what did she tell me? She was like, you're not ready. I don't think you're ready for a book deal, but you should self-publish the book, right? You should self-publish. You should gain experience. You should work on your writing. So I had kind of two decisions there. Like, that was a crossroads. It was like, one decision was give up, right? The editor told me I wasn't good enough to get a book deal. And the other decision was to keep going, right? To keep writing. And I decided to keep going. I decided to self-publish. I decided to go for it. And I'm really glad I did. Because the editor wasn't telling me I was a bad writer as much as, hey, you're not quite ready. You need to put in more work. And that was a really amazing thing. So the second lesson I learned was fuck passion, find persistence. Find the persistence to keep going, to keep writing, to keep going after your dreams. Because a lot of people will tell you, hey, you're not quite ready. They're going to reject you. Your piece isn't ready for Fast Company. Your piece isn't ready for The Atlantic. Your piece isn't ready for this cool blog. That doesn't mean they're telling you that you're not a good writer or that you don't have good things to say. It just means you need to keep writing, right? You need to find persistence. And that was a really important lesson for me. Because when I first wrote I ran a crowdfunding campaign for the book. So I did an Indiegogo campaign that raised $13,000 from 500 people in about 40 countries, which was just this amazing thing because I started getting money for this book that I hadn't even outlined yet. People were giving me their credit card. I didn't even have an outline. And people were like, here's the money. I'm from Iceland. I want this book. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Because now I actually have to write it or else I'm going to just take the money and steal it and go buy like, some French fries from these people. And it was an amazing thing because people, when you put yourself out there, people actually want to support you and they want to support your writing journey. So when I first set out to write the first draft for the book, I wrote the first draft and I was like, this is awesome, I'm done. And then my editor came back and she was like, actually, Smiley, this kind of sucks. This book is actually really, really dark. I thought I was reading a book called The Quarter Life Breakthrough about inspiring 20-somethings to find themselves. And this book's kind of depressing. And so then again, like I came to a crossroads. I could have stopped writing because my editor told me my book sucked, or I could have gone and edited and made a lot of changes and done a couple more drafts because it needed work. So I went back and I read the draft and I was like, actually, this does need work. I'd written an entire paragraph on why society was evil and why kids should stop drinking soda and all of these things that were completely not relevant. And the truth was I needed to go back and put in more work. So I went back to the library and actually did 8 more drafts of the self-published book. So again, fuck passion, find persistence. It is a really, really major lesson I learned. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to my face for a second. You have to be able to keep going. You have to be able to say, okay, I didn't get it right the first time. The first draft wasn't right. The first time I pitched to an editor, I was going to get rejected. I'm going to actually keep going and find that persistence. Because 8 drafts is a lot, right? 8 drafts for a self-published book, that takes a year. That's a long time. But you have to keep going. You have to be willing to put in that work to really make it. And the next lesson I learned was start calling yourself a real writer today. Don't wait to call yourself a real writer. Because a lot of the times when I was self-publishing, people would be like, oh, you're self-publishing. That's cute. Oh, you're self-publishing. So you're not really a writer yet, right? you know, I tell people at a bar, yeah, I'm self-published, you know, I'm writing this book. They're like, okay, cool. Who's your publisher? Like Random House, Penguin, Crown? And I was like, me, I'm self-publishing. And they're like, ooh, nice. You know, beautiful women kind of be like, oh, cool, right? And now, actually, now that I have you know, a book deal with a New York City publisher, a lot of people are like, oh my God, you're a real writer, you're published. And I'm like, no, I was a real writer the second I picked up a pen, right? I was a real writer when I had that talk with my boss. I was a real writer the day I was in the room at StartingBloc. I was a real writer the second I started my blog, and the only person reading it was my mom. So you are a real writer today, right? Not when your blog goes viral, not when you get a book deal, not when you're on the New York Times bestseller list, today. So start thinking yourself as a real writer today. And a few other things I learned that I wish I knew when I started writing. Rejection is part of the journey. You're going to be rejected, right? People are going to tell you you're not ready. People are going to tell you, you know, it's not yet your turn, that you're going to have to go do more work, that this piece isn't good, that somebody else just wrote it, somebody else is cooler than you, somebody else has more followers, whatever. Rejection is part of the journey. So get used to it and embrace it, because this is a journey, right? Okay, the next lesson I learned, Smiley, your ass ain't Seth Godin. So a lot of people, especially in kind of the entrepreneurship StartingBloc community, are always like, well, Seth Godin did this, and Tim Ferriss did this, and Seth Godin did this. This is awesome. I respect that. And when you look at people like that have thousands and millions of followers, and you compare yourself to them, it's really hard to actually focus on what it is you want. It's also important to realize that someone like that can write something, and whether it's good or bad, and most of the things that Seth Godin writes are awesome, it's going to get shared so widely because this person is so popular. So I think one of the things that I realized early on is that you can't compare yourself to other writers, and you have to kind of define what it is you're going for and your own metrics for success. And for some of us, that might just be like writing the post and posting it. For some of us, that might just be someone's going to give me $5 or $10 for something I wrote. Awesome. For some of us, that might be, I just want to get a piece in Fast Company, or I just want to get a piece in Elephant Journal, or whatever your kind of focus is for your writing, and that's great. So set your own goals and don't compare yourself to others. Be patient, right? Doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. This whole thing takes a lot of time. And I want to continue that story. So I self-published the book. It took off, you know, became an Amazon bestseller and a top-rated job hunting book. And I went back to that editor, right? That editor that I'd first met with back in 2013, who was like, hey, Smiley, you're great. This is interesting. I really like your blog. The book idea is interesting. You're just not qualified for a book deal. So I went back to her and I showed her like the sales numbers, and I showed her some of the Amazon reviews. There were a lot of 5-star reviews, and I sent her a copy of the paperback that I had self-published, and she was like, damn, this is kind of impressive. I didn't think you were going to be able to do this. Like, this is really good. I'm impressed. You know, actually, it's still not the right fit for our publishing house, but I'm going to introduce you to my friend who's a literary agent in New York, and maybe you guys can hit it off. She's great. I think she might like you. So she introduced me to her friend, a literary agent in New York, and we ended up hitting it off, and she ended up signing me. And then we pitched a proposal for a book based on my self-published book that was signed by Tarcher Perigee, which is a Penguin Random House imprint. So the lesson there is that you have to spend, you know, 3 to 4 years doing something or more. Some people spend 5, 10, 20, 25 years before they kind of have that break that I had, but it takes a long time. It takes a long time. So I'm so glad that she told me to go back and self-publish. I'm so glad she rejected me, because I would have never written the book, right? So the next lesson I learned, know your why. And I'm going to go back and share the screen here for a few slides because I think it's important. Hold on one second. Know your why, right? So why are you writing, right? Everyone says start with why. So that's relevant for meaningful work, for your career, for your life, but also for your writing practice. Why are you writing? Not why Seth Godin writing or why Smiley writing or why that person in the New Yorker is writing, but why are you writing? Why must you write? What is the injustice you want to write about? What is the topic you care about? Why so deeply do you want to write? Why do you care? And why should I care? And I think a lot of writers, forget the fact that, writing has to be relevant. One of my favorite books about writing is a book called Walking on Water by Derek Jensen. And he says, the first rule about writing is don't bore the reader, right? We think it's like, as a writer, I'm going to write about whatever I want. That works, except no one necessarily wants to read that. So why are you writing? Why should I care? What is so interesting to you? What is a story you must tell? What is the thing you're trying to convey? What is the worldview you want other people to see? That's really important. So, people say, write what you love. And I say there's an asterisk there. Write what you love if what you love is kind of unique, so not everyone else is doing it. If what you love resonates with others. If what you love has a relevant, passionate audience. And if what you love matters. Most importantly, if what you love matters. If what you love is kind of like 18th century pottery in Ireland, awesome, that's cool. You should probably still write about it, but it might not be the best thing for making money because I don't think it necessarily matters to a wide audience. Versus something like millennials changing their careers, Black Lives Matter, women in business, right? Empowering young girls, talking about the future of climate change. These things matter, right? So write about something that matters and you're going to do, I think you're going to get a lot farther along. So don't just write what you know, write something people need to read, that they have to read. Like I fundamentally believe that this book for my audience, which is college students, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, is something that they need to read, that their life will be better from it. And I think that you see that the people that are figuring out a way to make their writing work are really writing something that's super, super filling a need. And whether that's for web designers or for graphic designers or design thinking or for women entrepreneurs or for whatever their niche audience is, those people, if they read that book, their life is going to be better from it. If they read their blog post, that article, they're going to be inspired. They're going to get a benefit. They're providing value from their writing. Oh. 1 second, everybody. All right. So now I'm going to go into the next section, tips for writers to turn their words into income. So start building your platform today. Don't wait till you get a big break or something gets published or you get famous or your book gets picked up by something. Just actually start writing today and start writing your platform today. Develop a simple website, an email newsletter. You can do that very easily. A simple website on Strikingly or Squarespace or WordPress. It takes about 5 minutes. I think I waited for about 3 years to set up my blog. My first blog, cost $18 to get a domain name and took about 6 minutes. So I would start that yesterday. Start an email newsletter. Even if you have 25 people that you're emailing on a regular basis, you're going to build your audience and build up a rapport with your readers, which is great. You should have a blog or a Medium page or even both, because I think both allows you to cross-post on different platforms. And then social media. I think it's important to be on social media, but it's really important to avoid the noise and pick the 2 to 3 platforms you really care about. So like a lot of people are like, are you on Pinterest? Are you on this? Are you on that? I'm like, no, because why the hell am I going to pin? It just doesn't make sense for me. So I think it's really important that, however, if I was doing crafts or if I was writing about crafts or writing about interior design, I should definitely be on Pinterest, right? So find the social media platforms that are relevant to your work, right? So that might just be like focusing all in on Instagram if what you write about is very visual, or it might be just focusing on YouTube, or it might just be focusing on your words and Twitter and just writing. So find the 2 to 3 platforms that make sense for you and don't feel like you actually need to be stretched to do everything. So writing doesn't pay. This is my next kind of lesson. Writing doesn't pay, at least not at first. And I think this is a really important thing. Like, people start writing and they're like, where's the checks? Like, where's the money coming in? It's like, well, I think everyone told you that this is going to be hard and that writing doesn't actually pay. And it's kind of true. Writing doesn't pay, at least not at first. But, and I'm going to share the slide again. Speaking pays, consulting pays, teaching pays sometimes, freelancing pays, being an advisor pays, getting a job pays, right? So all of these things can lead to income. And I think that that's really, really, really important. So, I think a lot of times, like, people think that they're just going to make money from like their actual words, their posts. And I want to make you all, I think it's really important to think of your writing as part of your business, right? So that if your writing leads to a speaking engagement, or if your writing leads to a consulting gig, if your writing leads to writing a guest blog post for a company or a website, that actually is paying. That means your writing is giving you income, but it's just not necessarily coming from the actual 500-word post that you wrote last Thursday. It might come a month later, or 2 months later, or a year later. It's all connected. So to think of your writing as leverage for future engagements, I think, is really where it's at. That's been the biggest thing that I've realized, that writing does. So using your writing to seek alternative income sources, right? So that your words, your communication style, your message, your brand is actually making money, and the writing is part of that. It's one piece of the puzzle. And this is a little bit different for people that just want to be straight up writers. I have a friend, Ryan, who's a freelancer for the New York Times. He's a journalist. He identifies as a journalist. He makes a living as a journalist. He makes a living only from, he only uses Microsoft Word. Let's just say it like that. He's a straight up writer. When he started, however, though, he was freelancing for the New York Times and refereeing dodgeball to pay his bills, right? So refereeing dodgeball once or twice a week, because that's how he supported himself. But even when he started, he was open to taking other projects. He worked on a couple projects for HBO as an assistant producer. He did some research. He was open to taking these other gigs that were related to his work. He's a sports journalist. So they're related to his work, but they weren't straight up just sports journalism. They were in the sports journalism world, but they weren't just writing. And I think that's really important. And because he was flexible and open to those alternative income sources, he was able to kind of give himself the time to build his craft and then get a few more pieces published, and now kind of be a full-time journalist. So want to make money from writing? Become an expert. Whatever it is that you want to write about, become an expert in that space, right? Okay, so my stuff is millennial careers, right? This is a popular space. There are a lot of people, millennial workplace expert, millennials in the workplace, the new rules of work, new rules of career ladders. It's a crowded space, but I've in the last 3 or 4 years kind of cultivated seen as an expert, partly because of that book, right? A lot of people think, you're just writing a book to sell some books on Amazon. I wrote that book as a business card. That's to say, hey, here's what I'm about, right? Here, you got a little card that you spent $20 at moo.com. I wrote a book for a year. Boom, right? And no matter what, some people might not like it, but it's impressive, right? And when you have a book, it immediately establishes a level of expertise. When you speak on a panel, it establishes a level of expertise. When you have an article in Fast Company, it establishes a level of expertise. When you have an article in whatever kind of the blogs and publications that are looked to as kind of important in your field, whatever that is, you become an expert. And when you become an expert, you can start to make money from writing and from the rest of your business. So cultivate that expertise. Whatever it is that you want to become an expert in, cultivate that expertise. Cultivate a niche, right? I see a lot of writers, especially, and I was like this when I first started, they're writing about everything. 10 ways to start my day, 10 ways to become a life coach, 10 ways to fight climate change, 10 ways to have fun with my sister. Awesome. That's great. That's pretty interesting. It's a good way to start and explore. At some point, if you really kind of want to stay in this space, you really want to be known for, you are the virtual reality writer. Boom. That's what you write about. And yes, sure, you write about other stuff and you journal and you practice, But like, that's when, you know, when they think of, you know, the virtual reality space, that's you, right? You are the Black Lives Matter writer. Boom. That's what you write about. That's your niche. That's your expertise. If there is a conference, you are going to be the one that they go to ask to speak. If there is a big article coming out, they want to quote you. I think that's really important to cultivate that niche because it allows us to research, so we really know our space really well, know the other people and know the other players that are the other writers and the other thought leaders in that space, and you can kind of build bonds and partnerships with those folks, and it allows you to build your business that way. Another lesson: give yourself press. So a lot of people think that like when you start writing, like people are going to start writing about you, or you're going to get all these clips. That might happen if you're famous. Awesome. Aziz Ansari probably gets a lot of press. I love Aziz Ansari. But I think it's really important when you're starting out to give yourself press. So you know how like on a website people will say like as seen in like Fast Company, Good, Mashable, you know, The Atlantic. A lot of the times those articles or those clips for writers are pieces they wrote, right? Then it doesn't say it on the website, but it's like the Fast Company, like no one wrote like Smiley Pozwalski's awesome in Fast Company. I wrote an article in Fast Company and it's like, I'm featured in Fast Company. That's how it works. Kind of like, I guess, weird, but I think it's just kind of the way it works. So give yourself press. Like you want to be featured in a publication, write something for that publication, right? You want to be thought of as an expert, like just establish your expertise in that area and submit content. Publications are always looking for content from people, and if you come up with a really good idea, I guarantee you they'll run it because they want clicks. That's how it works. So give yourself press. Whatever the press is you want, whatever the publication is that you want to be in, that you think will help you use this as leverage for other income sources. Remember that idea of leverage. Give yourself that press. Oh, stop pitching to the New York Times. This is something I learned. I think when I first started writing, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in the New York Times. I'm going to be in the New Yorker. This is cool. That might happen in 10 years if I'm lucky, which is great. But I think it's more important to focus on small niche publications than these kind of big things that people think about. The New York Times has a huge pool of staff writers. They don't take a lot of freelancers. Like my buddy Ryan, he's been in the game they've actually been writing for 10 years. Even he has trouble getting featured in the New York Times. So I think it's better and more advantageous for writers, especially when they're starting out, to focus on small yet popular niche blogs and publications. And those are places like in the realm that you've probably seen, like Lifehacker, TechCrunch, Fastco, Elephant Journal, Tech Lady Mafia, Mind Body Green. Oh, I just put all this on here for fun. Like I Hate Gluten. If I Hate Gluten was a website and you want to be in the nutrition space, like write for I Hate Gluten if that's your thing. Paleos Are Us, like that type of stuff. You have a smaller audience, but it's a super, super passionate audience. So let's say 50,000 or 100,000 people read those blogs. They're all really, really interested in that topic. And they're probably going to tweet you and pick up your stuff. And it's a really, really good idea, really good way to do it. The other thing I think is focusing on quality over quantity. I think a lot of people that start writing think that they have to like post every day on Medium or constantly be throwing out content. And there's so much garbage of content out there. So actually like really focus on writing one high quality, high leverage piece per quarter, right? And everyone's different. So some of you that might be long form, some of that might just be a really short, really good piece, but try to just kind of get rid of the noise and focus on writing one really good piece that you care about, that you do research for, that you spend time on, that you get someone to edit, that you actually really delve into. And I think that is much more powerful than just kind of being like, every day I'm going to write something and put it out, and I hope that one person tweets it, and I hope I get a few likes on Facebook because everyone else is getting likes on Facebook. I think actually that focus on quality is where it's at. And for me, this was writing the book, which was saying, hey, I'm going to like not really write that much for the external world for a year because I'm focused on my book. And then this book I have is huge leverage for other things. right? Rather than like, yeah, I could have written like 14 blog posts during that time or 64 blog posts, and cool, would I have had some like more likes on Facebook and some more Twitter followers? Yeah, but is the impact on the world greater because of that, or greater because you have the book? So whether that's a book for you, or a really amazing piece, or starting your own storytelling platform, or doing a book of poetry, or whatever it is for you, focus on that high quality, high leverage piece, I think is really, really, really crucial. Cross post everything on Medium and LinkedIn. I think one thing I'm going to mention is that I think people's personal blogs is a really hard space now. I think that 5-10 years ago, that was an area where you could really start to build up your own following. But now what we're seeing is that the places where people really get traction is where other people can find them and easily kind of cross-reference when they see their friends liking something, or they see someone tweet something. And Medium, I think, has really changed the game on that. So if you write in the career or work or HR space, you want to be on LinkedIn like all the time, writing on LinkedIn. I see a lot of writers get a lot of buzz on LinkedIn. For Medium has publications you can submit to, whether it's a design publication, tech publications, specific audience publications. Like, make sure you submit your pieces to those publications, because then you're potentially getting your work in front of 500, 1,000, 5,000 new readers that you would never get to touch if you were just waiting for them to come to your blog. The problem with your own personal blog is that it's cool for the people that are following it, but doesn't do anything for everyone else, because no one else can see it unless they're following you. So that's why sites like Medium and LinkedIn have really taken off. Be wary of giving your work out if you don't retain the rights to it. One of the reasons I love LinkedIn and Medium so much for my writing is that it's all rights reserved by the author. So like, for instance, if I submit a publication to a place and they pay me $100, $100 is cool, but then they retain the rights, I can never use that piece in like a book or another thing that I want to write, which kind of sucks. So if it's something that I'm just writing that's random that I don't really care about, that's fine. But if it's something that I think I want to include in a future book, it's not worth $100 to me. I'd rather retain the rights to my work rather than just get the $100 check. Another thing you can do is submit guest posts to popular niche single author blogs. So there are a lot of, this would be like someone probably not quite as big, but it's someone like a Seth Godin or a Tim Ferriss or Zen Habits blog, or those types of blogs that are one person writing it, and they have to come up with all this content, and they probably can't do it. So if you can say, hey, I love your blog, I've been following, can I submit a guest post? And at the bottom it says, this is guest post is written by Smiley Pozwalski, follow him here. Now you have all of that person's readers saying like, oh, check out Smiley. And it's just a great way to get in front of new people. And people are always looking for content. So if you can find someone that has a popular blog, just be like, hey, I have this idea for a publication. Can I guest post on your blog? Most likely, if it's good, they're going to say yes. A few other ideas for making money from writing. Start a Patreon campaign. Patreon is a pretty cool site. It's kind of like crowdfunding for artists. So you can set up basically a subscription. So someone would gives like a monthly fee to you in exchange for like getting exclusive blog posts, or if you are a comic book artist, exclusive comic books or poems or whatever. And they say, like, let's say they contribute $10 a month. That's like can add up if you get a bunch of people to submit $10 a month, right? And then you kind of have this dedicated following and audience where you're like, okay, I know I have 100 Patreon subscribers that I need to get work to every month. So check out that site, patreon.com. You can put up a paywall or a PayPal button on your site. A lot of people never do this. And some people might be like, I love your blog. Like, I'm going to give you $1,000. And you're like, sweet, right? It's a great way to kind of just get some money. Launch a crowdfunding campaign. Again, the Indiegogo campaign is how I started my career. It's the only reason my book even exists. So crowdfunding is a great way to get a book off the ground. You build an audience. You have immediately people that are pre-ordering the book. It's great for marketing. It's a really valuable tool. Self-publish. Amazon has made it very easy with Amazon Kindle for ebook and Create Space for paperbacks to self-publish your book. You essentially need to write up your document and then get it formatted the right way, which you can do. You can spend some money on, which I did. If you want a good designer, you can also do it online for, I don't know, probably like $10 or something, or $50 on the internet. And then your book is online and it can be spot anywhere in the world. That's the cool thing about Amazon. Someone wants to download your book in India, boom, done. Someone wants to buy your book in England, you don't have to go to the post office, they just buy it. And you get a royalty check every month. So that's a great way for some people to self-publish. A few more things. So traditional blogs, I think, are dead. Again, that's not applicable if your name is Seth Godin, but remember, Smiley, your ass ain't Seth Godin. So I just think it's really hard for people that are kind of starting from ground zero to kind of only gain traffic organically to their blog. In 10 years ago, there was less stuff out there and less content. So now I think it's really important for writers to think of alternative storytelling platforms. So a few things here: launch a podcast or guest on a podcast. Think about the things that are becoming, if the blog was where it was at 10 years ago, where is it going to be at? Where is it at now? What's cool now? And what's going to be cool in 10 years? So launch a visual storytelling platform. I know a lot of StartingBloc folks have seen that, techies.com. It's a really beautiful platform. There's photos of different people, how they got into tech. It's very diverse. And there's like little interviews and stories, but this is a visual form of writing, but it's very 2016. You wouldn't have seen this in 2006, right? So that's where we're headed. So how can you launch something like that? Write a YouTube series or a Vimeo series, use new media platforms, Snapchat, Instagram. Where are those things headed? How do they apply to writing? So the traditional blog, I think we're going to kind of see that shift into a more new media platform that involves video. Which is scary, like for someone like me, because I'm not up on all that stuff, but let's try to anticipate the next trend. And I have a thing here on the slide that says, hint, it's not 10 ways to do X. Like we're done with that now, right? Which is actually kind of good because we're all sick of the 10 ways to do this and 10 ways to do this. Like that was maybe innovative, I guess, 10 years ago. How many posts have we read called 10 ways to do this? That's not going to be where it's at in 2 or 3 years. So if we're still writing that as writers, we're going to be swept left in the dust by all these people that are cool and doing really interesting storytelling platforms that involve photos and videos and interactive elements. Okay. Write content for company blogs and social media. This is a great way. Like a lot of times when I was starting with my writing, a lot of companies would reach out to me and say, hey, can you guest post for our blog? It's in the HR space or in the tech space, or it's millennial focused. And those places will pay you $100, $200 a piece. Or, hey, can you think of our content on Facebook for a couple weeks? This is a great way for writers to kind of leverage their words into income, because these companies all pay social media folks. A lot of those types of jobs are moving towards freelance and contractor work. So you could say, yeah, I don't want to work for you full time, but I'll do a blog post a week for you, right? Or do your newsletter. And that's a great way to use your writing to make income, because all of those companies have a good budget for that stuff. And you can kind of say hey, if I get your numbers and your click rates open and your follower numbers up, I want more money. So you can use that again as leverage. So again, to summarize here, when you're starting out, you will write for free. But I want to tell a little story about how an article I wrote for Fast Company led to a $10,000 speaking gig. And this is kind of crazy. I wrote an article for Fast Company in 2014 about millennials in the workplace. Did not get paid for the piece. Later that year, they asked me to come to, this company asked me to come to their annual conference. I did not get paid to go to the annual conference to speak, so I did that for free as well. They paid for my flight, but I did not go, did not get paid. It was a kind of a panel about millennials in the workplace. The next year, I stayed in touch with that company. I did some, a couple Twitter chats with them. The next year, they brought me to their annual conference and paid me $10,000 to speak. So 2 years later, a piece I wrote for free for no money led to $10,000 in 30 minutes of work. Interesting, right? One conclusion there, speaking is awesome and pays. The other conclusion there is 2 years of work is a long ass time, right? So it's not like, woohoo, here, you know, like it's gonna happen overnight. Remember, fuck passion, find persistence. 2 years is a long time, but sometimes when you're starting with something like writing or the creative arts, you know, I hate to tell people to work for free because I believe that if a company has money to put in their coffee machine, they should pay you. You know, I would have gotten paid about 100, 150 bucks for that piece, which is nice. But again, what's the real goal here? The goal is to be able to make money as a whole. Writing is a piece of that. Wrote the piece for free. 2 years later, got the $10,000 gig. I'll take writing for free and getting the $10,000 gig over the $150 check. But that's me. Okay. So again, I think the idea here is making income from work related to your writing. So using the writing as a piece, as a launch point, as leverage, as kind of a focal point or one of the constellations in a bigger picture of how you as a business and you as an entrepreneur and intrapreneur are making a living. So I want to go over a few writing rituals and resources, and then address 2 of the questions that came in. So I just want to go through these quickly. And again, I'm going to share this deck that I have that I prepared, so that you don't worry too much about taking notes here, because I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. So these are a few writing habits I have and a few people I know well use. Write first thing in the morning. Before checking email. I think we all know the second you check email, you're down the rabbit hole, right? Suddenly you're on like some wedding invitation, and then you're in the middle of a Google Doc, and you owe rent, and Bank of America is coming at you with something. Like, you're done for, and then like, all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock. So write first thing in the morning before you check email. Before you check the red dot on Facebook, it tells you how many notifications you have. Before you check Bumble or Tinder or Hinge or whatever crap, right first thing in the morning. Just carve that out. Write at the same time and place every day. So this idea of ritual, I think, is really, really important. Writers write. They know where they do their best writing. They know when they do their best writing. If that's at a cafe, great. If that's at a park, awesome. If that's in your bedroom, wherever that is and whatever time of day that is for you, rock it. And again, obviously, some of us don't have the flexibility of writing daily. Awesome. If it's every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to noon, word. If it's Friday nights from 7 to 10 and you don't go out to the bar, great. So whatever that is for you, rock it. No email, phone, or Facebook while writing. I think this is really important. It's so easy to get distracted. Writing is very frustrating. We always come to blocks at the end of a sentence or a paragraph or a page. And the only thing that's better than the only thing more exciting than writing is being like, ooh, like, oh my God, like this person messaged me on Tinder. That's like a writer's dream, because then they're done, right? Or yeah, oh, you want to get lunch? You're in my neighborhood? Sweet. I didn't really want to write anyway. So turn off the phone and don't be on the phone when you're writing. Always carry a Moleskine journal or a small notebook with you. When I get in this headspace of a book, I have like all these ideas. I'm like, oh, I should talk to that person. And oh, this thing I just did at a cafe would be a great little story. But if I don't write it down, I lose it. And like within 20 minutes, it's gone and I can't even remember it. So I try to carry a little notebook, which is like something like this in my back pocket. And it really helps. Just to like, even if I just write down a word or two or a person's name or like an idea for a post, that's really helpful. Always be reading. I think it's the most important thing. Whatever it is that you like to read, the blogs, the websites in the area, fiction and nonfiction, I think is really important, especially for nonfiction writers to read fiction, just because you learn a lot about storytelling and different ideas. So that's crucial. A few writing tips. So deadlines equal books equal money, or deadlines equal money, no matter whether you're writing books or not. If you don't set a deadline, if you don't have these dates in mind, you won't get anything done and you'll never get paid. So stick to a deadline and set a deadline and stick to it. And that's like, put yourself out there. I think one way to do that is to say like, hey guys, I'm self-publishing my book on September 1st. Like, I'm releasing my book on September 1st. And you tell everyone on your newsletter, you tell everyone on Facebook, and you're just like, woo! Because then it's like, if you don't do that, you are kind of a loser. So set that deadline and make it public, and people will hold you accountable to it. Writing equals extended focused attention. So as millennials and young people, and given the digital age, like the last thing we're good at is extended focused attention. Our brains have been programmed, and we're used to looking at so many different screens and so many different things and talking to 4 people at once, and I even now have 4 windows open on my MacBook. This is not good. This is not good for writing. You know, most writing up until 50 years ago or whatever, last 40 years ago, happened on a typewriter, which meant like you were just writing. So maybe buy a typewriter. But this idea that you need extended focused attention to really get into your writing, I think, is important. Know where and when you best write. You write best. Again, I mentioned that, but find, kind of create your own creative success. Set yourself up for success. I don't like writing in cafes because I find them distracting. I don't like the fact that someone's just randomly playing punk rock and I don't want to listen to that. Or someone's having a breakup like right next to me and I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. So I like to write from home or the UCSF library because it's really quiet. But that's just me. Someone else loves the chatter. So you have to figure out what works for you. Saying no to others equals saying yes to your craft. This is really important. I think the biggest thing that I did well over the last couple of years is just saying no. Like, yeah, that's awesome. I can't make it. That's a cool project. I'm so honored you want me to help you with that, or like co-write your book, but I'm working on my own book. Thank you very much. Like, people come at you with all these things and deep inside, you're like, what I really need to do right now is focus on that blog post that I'm writing or focus on my book. Stop saying yes to all those other things. There are certain projects where you should say yes to, but I think we all know those. And it's really important to say no, especially when people are coming at you for your time when you're trying to write, because your time is so valuable. So break up your writing into small assignments. One of my favorite books about writing is a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, and she talks about this, the power of small assignments, of short assignments. So when we think of a book, we get so like worked up, like, oh my God, page 247, chapter 72, like, what am I even gonna do? Like, oh my God, it's so much. One page at a time, one paragraph at a time. What are the prompts that you can do that will get you writing just a page, right? Oh, that time when that person broke up with me, or the time I quit my job, or, why, self-driving cars are the key to the future. The time I first got in a self-driving car, the time I first went to StartingBloc, whatever that first little like thing is that sparks you to write about something, focus on that and not on the whole big picture. When I write a book, I have all these Post-its, and like the book, like each like Post-it becomes like a chapter, or even like a section of a chapter, because that allows me to just kind of focus on one little thing at a time. And I think that that's really empowering, because when we have like just a blank page and this everything, it gets crazy and confusing. Friends don't make good editors. I see a lot of people post on Facebook like, hey, I'm working on a book, or I just wrote this post. Who wants to read it? This is like this is kind of what we do. I don't recommend doing this, and here's why. Your friends are great people. But that doesn't mean they know anything about editing. And what happens if you send a book or a blog post or a poem or something you've been working on for a long time to 8 people is you're going to get like 8 different answers. So 8 people are going to say like, you're awesome, Smiley. This is so good. Like, just change this paragraph. And one person's going to be like, well, I didn't like this paragraph, but I like this. And these people are like, they I guess their opinions matter. And if you listen to them, you'd end up like with nothing because you're going to go 8 different directions. I think it's more important, and this really applies more to people that are working on long projects like a book. Find one editor, pay them if you can. And there are editors that are available. There are editors probably in the StartingBloc community that are professional editors, and just focus on their opinions, because then you have kind of one person, you're one writer with one person giving you feedback. And this is really useful rather than getting torn in different directions. I found that friends, it's really hard for friends to be honest and vulnerable when they read your work. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Like, no friend is ever going to say your book sucks. And sometimes you need to hear that your book sucks. It's just the real deal. And that's important. I mean, if you want to do this, you need to be able to take that criticism and take that feedback. And friends are really good for being like, what do you think of this title? Or what do you think of this cover? What do you think of this idea? But not necessarily, what do you think about these 200 pages? So I would recommend getting an editor, even if you're paying them not that much money, or even if you're not paying them, one person to read your work, I think is more useful. A few writing tools. Self-control is a cool program that blocks certain websites. Again, so if you have that on, you actually can't go on Facebook. Medium, obviously, all of you know about Medium, a great blogging platform, super interactive. You can like highlight stuff and tweet it. You can interact with other writers. I found that actually growing my platform on Medium has been way more useful than growing my own blog. So I pretty much just focus on that now. Squarespace, strikingly, and WordPress, just good, easy website developing tools. As a writer, you don't need something super fancy. Just get something up there, I think, is the most important. Get a beautiful picture of your face or you doing something you care about, and then have people be able to read your work. That's really what all there is to it. And all of you, by the end of the day, could set up your website if you haven't already. Scrivener is a cool software, writing software that allows you to kind of storyboard and have multiple windows open and kind of outline and stuff like that. I actually personally don't use it. I just use Microsoft Word, old school. It just works for how I think, but I can see why Scrivener is good for a lot of people. So I think when it comes to writing tools and platforms, you figure out what works for you and just rock it. There's a cool site called 750 Words, which is kind of like a daily journaling platform that kind of takes up the full screen and it makes you write 750 words a day. So that's something to check out. A few author websites that I love, I think they're good for people that are trying to build their writing platform and build like a following. Jeff Goins and Tim Grahl. Tim Grahl writes a lot about book marketing. Those are useful. A few recommended books on writing: The War of Art, Bird by Bird, The Artist's Way, Crossroads of Should and Must, and Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. Beautiful book. Again, I'm going to send out this deck. And then a few books on book marketing. There's a book that Tim Grahl wrote called Your First 1,000 Copies, which is just super basic and useful. Ape by Guy Kawasaki, artist, publisher, entrepreneur. And then a book, if any of you are trying to do formal publishing, The Unconventional Guide to Publishing is a really awesome book. Yeah, so I want to spend a couple time just wrapping up, and there was a couple questions that I know Michael and Snow White both sent in. So I want to address those and then give you all the chance to go and enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays. So, Michael asked, what about like when to self-publish? So like, what's the time to self-publish? How do you know you're ready? And he said, like, should I submit something that's not quite ready to self-publish, or should I kind of finish it? Or should I write like these small volumes or a larger one? I think it depends. Everyone's different. You have to figure out what works for you. It depends kind of what you're writing about. So I can't really speak to that specifically, because I think every genre or every, if you're writing like tech manuals or something that's super technical, you might want to go with a shorter type of thing. But I do think that when you are going to put your work out there in the form of a book, just knowing from how much time, money, and energy it took me, I think it's worth spending that extra time and really, really not putting out something that's half-baked. one of the things that I've learned with that, I'm so glad that I really spent the time. I see a lot of people put out books that, you know, they're kind of like just trying to drive traffic, trying to get email subscribers. They're like, I wrote a book and it's an ebook and it's like, you know, 10 things I learned today. Cool. It looks cool. Like they got someone to design a 3D cover. Respect anyone who writes anything. I respect. And I bet you if that person put in like 3, 4, 5 months more work, they could have come up with something dope. So don't rush. Remember, be patient. Don't worry about the noise. Everyone's writing books. Cool. You'll get to yours when you get to it. But when you get to it, like, make it ill. Like, spend that extra 6 months on the project. Get someone to design a cool cover. Like, really edit it. Really make it good. Because when you put that on Amazon, you really want it to reflect who you are, what you stand for in the world. So spend time on it. There's no rush. Spend time on it if you're going to do a book. And then Snow White asked about the editing process, like tips for editing and how to go about that. And again, everyone's different. Everyone has to come up with their own systems. I think the key, again, is to like hire somebody. I think hiring an editor, you know, it's so funny. Like, we pay people to make pizza for us. We pay people to like design websites. We pay people to do all these different things. And yet we don't pay editors to edit our work. And like, editing is like, it's like the mechanic for a car, right? You as a driver, you don't drive a car that hasn't been seen by a mechanic, right? You just don't get it. It doesn't go on the road legally. Like, you can't actually put it out there. That same should go for writing. If your work isn't edited, and I don't just mean typos, like, I don't really care about typos. It's more like actually someone being like, what are you really saying here? You just repeated yourself. Actually, this doesn't sound like you. Or this chapter 3 is just garbage. If we pay an editor and then come up with a system that works with that editor, what you're gonna do and when you're gonna do it, and the whole timeline, I think, is really important. I think with editors, you can break the book down into small assignments and really kind of focus on one task at a time and actually commit to deadlines. I think that's the biggest thing about having an editor. They're like, okay, you're paying me, so if you don't do the edits, like, you're just wasting your money. It kind of just gets you into action. Whereas if you're just like, yeah, I'm working on my book and, you know, we'll get to it. Or, well, I don't know. Yeah, it was supposed to be done in September, but now I'm working on January because, you know, my computer is kind of broken right now and it's been cloudy out. Like, okay, blah, 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 excuses. If you have an editor, like, they're going to hold you to it. So put your money on the line. So that's it. Much love, StartingBloc. I'm going to send out this deck. Sorry for like the technical glitches in some of this. It's kind of hard to run this without technical support, trying to figure out the screen shares and everything. But I hope it was useful. I love you all, and feel free to hit me up if you have questions, and I'll try to get back to you in a timely fashion. But much love, and hope to see you soon. Peace.